The summer going into my senior year of high school, my friends and I heard about a bonfire/rave type party some kids from a neighboring school were throwing. My friend Tyler knew the kids orchestrating the event and asked if we can come. They told us the more the merrier. The kids then told Tyler where and when the party was going to be. The party was a bit of a tradition. The seniors of the school had thrown the party at the same location in the middle of the woods near a national forest in our area for the past few years, 7 or 8 years. It was sort of a big deal. People would bring booze and drugs and would have a bonfire rave type party before senior year started. My group of friends were very excited to be going because we've heard older kids from our school talk about how much fun it was and that kids from many neighboring schools would be there, not just kids from the host school. The only problem was we would have to go in separate groups. I had to work late, and Tyler did as well as did one of our other friends, James. The day came, and our big group of friends met up with the host of the event and followed them out there. They said it was pretty easy to find, but could see how someone could get lost, as there are many 2 tracks they had to turn onto, and if you missed one, you weren't going to make it to the location. I noticed that and picked Tyler up after work. We waited for James to get out of work and head out to the party around 8 p.m. It was starting to get dark when we arrived to the main dirt road we were supposed to take, and we called one of our friends at the party. He gave us some vague directions as he was drunk and slurring his words. We got the gist of what he was saying though and took off. After about 40 minutes of driving in the woods, we decided to call again and ask what we should be looking for. Our friend picked up, but he was too far gone. Luckily, a kid who had his wits about him took the phone and started telling us. He asked if we were near the river. We had just crossed over it and I told him that. He said we were too far if we crossed over the river and we should turn around and head back to the beginning, as we probably missed the very first turn in the darkness. We turned around and were heading back, but since I'm bad with direction, we made another wrong turn. But I thought we made it as I saw a bright light up ahead. It looked like a bonfire, but a lot smaller than I thought it would be. As we approached, I noticed there was no clearing the host mentioned, where we could park our cars. Also, there was only one car visible. A big truck. I turned my lights off and used my parking light as a source of visibility because I was a little creeped out. Tyler and James asked if I was being a pussy and they told me to hurry up. They wanted to party. We got close, and I saw only a few people were at the fire, 5 or 6. And when we got close, they all looked towards us. I parked the car and turned off the engine and started to gather my drinks when James said, "What the fuck? Are they wearing robes?" A few of the people stood up, and it did indeed look like they were wearing black hooded robes. I was really worried at this point. It looked like we stumbled upon a cult in the middle of one of their meetings. The group of people started moving towards my truck. That's when I bitched out and turned the car on. We got out of there. I got my little Ranger, turned around, and was going as fast as I could away from that group of people. I thought we were good, but after a while I saw headlights coming up behind us. I was worried because I didn't know what the heck was up with the vehicle behind us. Were they friendly? Why were they behind us if they were? Whatever it was, I was 100% against stopping and meeting this group of people. We were at least 40 minutes from the main dirt road and another 30 minutes from civilization. We were in the middle of nowhere. The car was gaining on us all of a sudden. It was black. No lights were behind us anymore. It was odd. Tyler said, "They turned around." For some reason, they turned around. Obviously, we weren't being pursued anymore, but I was done with the woods and the night for now. We ended up making our way out of the forest and back home. The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls from our friends who were at the party. They left messages and several texts. I told them I would explain everything when we were together again because the story was so crazy and too long to text, and a phone call would take up too much time. They didn't believe me when I told them what happened. Even after asking Tyler and James, they still didn't believe. They thought we were making the whole thing up, but unfortunately we weren't. So, somewhere in a forest of Michigan, there's a group of people who meet in the woods at night, wearing black robes around a bonfire doing who knows what.
This happened back when I was about 8 or 9 years old. Most of my life was spent living with my family in a small apartment building until one day it was time for a new beginning. My dad was a truck driver and was promoted to head driver of his company. We packed our bags and moved into what I'll call the lot. It was similar to a gated community. All the truck drivers' families live here while the drivers went away on several month-long trips. It was a nice place with lots of small houses and a fairly large group of kids living in the community with their parents. Me and my 4-year-old brother made lots of friends fairly quickly. We would all go exploring like little adventurers around the lot and surrounding fields. One day, our little group was making our way home when one of the kids saw an old rusty van parked right outside the entrance of the lot. A middle-aged man with greasy brown hair was sitting in the driver's seat staring at us as we walked towards my house. At the time, we didn't think much of it. After all, we were only kids. 3 days later, my friends and I were playing on a vacant street by the picnic area while our parents were barbecuing, smoking, and talking amongst each other. My friend Bill suggested a game of hide and seek, and somehow I became the seeker. I closed my eyes and counted while everyone scrambled to find a hiding spot. After a while, I found my brother in one of the small fields closest to the road. I turned around the corner of the last house when I saw that strange driver of that rusty van standing casually in front of my little brother, trying to persuade him into his van with promises of candy. Fear rushed through me, flowed with blood-boiling anger. This sicko was trying to get my 4-year-old little brother to go with him? God only knows what he would have done to him. I quickly came to my brother's rescue, picked him up, and ran. As I was running, I could hear the creep running after us, but I somehow managed to outrun him. I made my way to the front of the houses and kept running. Using what little breath I had left, I opened my mouth and screamed. All of the adults ran towards us, and I guess one of the truck drivers saw the creeper because he ran past us yelling curse words. They ended up tackling the guy down to the ground. One of the adults yelled at his wife to call the police. The cops searched the guy's van, and it turns out there were hundreds of photos of me, my brother, and our friends scattered all over the place. We found out this guy was a convicted pedophile who had just gotten out of jail for molesting children around the same age group. After finding this out, the thought of my brother being hurt by this creep sickens me. Imagine if one of my friends would have been taken, or even me. So, creepy pedophile who tried to kidnap my brother, let's never meet because you won't like what happens if we do.
About 2 years ago, my friend and I had found out about an abandoned insane asylum located in Downey, California. Being the curious 17-year-olds that we were, we decided it would be a good idea to go explore this abandoned facility, just to see what we can find inside. So, on a Saturday night, we gathered a few more of our friends and made the drive out to Downey, so we can explore this building for ourselves. After about 30 minutes of driving, we arrive in Downey and make our way through the city where the asylum is located. The closer we get, the shadier and shadier the neighborhoods we're passing through become. And after another 15 minutes of driving, we arrive to our destination. We park the car, climb through a hole in the fence, and make our way into the building to see what we can find. To be honest, it started out not being too bad. Considering we had about 10 people, we were thinking, what's the worst that could happen to a group of 10 people? So we meandered through the building, looking at all the broken furniture scattered throughout the rooms, the patient files thrown upon the floor, and we're pretty much just having a good time looking at what this once weird mental institution was. But this is where shit gets weird. As we're walking, we of course had a flashlight pointed down the hallway because the power that was once in this building was and is clearly out. As we're walking with our flashlights pointed ahead of us, and we come to this corner, we see the adjacent wall of the corner light up from what we assumed was another flashlight. And sure enough, we turn the corner and there's another group of 4 kids. Shady, weird fucking kids. We confront each other, and then ask us if we'd been to the slide. We politely answer no because we have no idea what they're even talking about, and they tell us that we should follow them. Of course, we decline because we're getting weird vibes from these people, and they're talking amongst themselves. One of the kids comes up to me with, I kid you not, a solid 6-inch long Bowie knife looking thing. Isn't this cool? Look what I found. And he moves the knife closer to my face. I politely answer what a cool find that is, and we start to walk back, telling them that we're gonna go explore the roof of the building. Surprisingly, they say alright and they turn the corner and continue on their way. Alright, I'm seriously beginning to feel weird about being in this place, and about how we're definitely not supposed to be here. So, at that point, I say fuck it. We need to go to the roof, go down to the fire escape, and get out of here. So we make our way to the roof, and we're sitting there plotting our escape. Like I said, people are not supposed to be in the asylum, so they have a police car stationed at the main gate to make sure no one comes in. So as we're up there, we try and figure out the best path to get out of here without being noticed by the police. That's when my friend sees a fire escape ladder coming down off of this higher portion of the roof. We decide that that's probably our best bet, so we grab a small ladder that will be able to boost us up onto this higher portion of the roof. My friend Jonah goes up and immediately turns around so he can help other people out by pulling them up. As I'm getting myself up there, my heart completely fucking sinks. Jonah, did you not see this when you got up here? I whisper. What the fuck are you talking about, man? He responds. I'm looking forward and he slowly turns to see what was pretty much our worst fucking nightmare. There's about 15 hooded people sitting in a circle up there surrounding a burning cat or some other dead animal. These motherfuckers are talking in tongues and making noises which seem satanic. As we're both getting down, we got noticed, and they started talking amongst themselves in this weird language, and as soon as we get down, those motherfuckers stand up and start sprinting towards us. I tell everyone to ditch the idea of the fire escape and not to worry about the cop. We just needed to get the fuck out of here. So we started sprinting through this building with this cult in close pursuit behind us. We miraculously made it out of that building, and they're starting to run across a field to the main gate. And as we're doing so, the cop notices all of the commotion, turns on his sirens, and comes driving in. Thank God he managed to cut the cult off from us. And he starts to chase them as we get away safely. Honestly, I can safely say it was the scariest experience of my life. What would we have done if they'd taken one of our friends? Would we have to go back in and confront them? I don't know. And I'm glad that that didn't happen.
For some insight, I am a 25-year-old female. This incident I'm about to share with you occurred last year in the summer when I was walking to the store only a few blocks from my house. I live in a safe suburban neighborhood, and before this incident, I never feared taking a stroll around the area by myself. Somehow, this day was different though. From the moment I started walking down my street, something just did not feel right. It was earlier in the evening, and still light outside, and yet not a soul in sight. The silence was deafening. Now, this is normally when I'd put my earbuds in and listen to some music as I went about my merry way. But that day, I had this sense that I needed to be as alert as possible. I could not rationalize it, but a sense of dread began to take root within me the further I got away from my house. Had it not been for my stubborn determination to get to my destination, I would have turned back right then and there. I turned a corner which leads down a residential street. Now I'm going to try to paint a picture as best as I can, so please bear with me. At the end of the long stretch of this street, there's an elementary school, which at the time was completely deserted as it was past school hours. To the right of that, there's a street that leads to a longer detour back to my home street. The left, a road that leads to an intersection. That was the direction I was headed. I was making my way past the nearby houses when I saw a black truck up ahead. It had come from around the corner and was veering down the street towards me. At this time, there was no logical reason to be unnerved by this, but I swear to you, from the moment I saw that truck, my stomach dropped and a feeling of impending doom had overtaken my sensibilities. I didn't know why, but this truck made me feel very anxious. I froze as the truck drove past me, and the driver looked directly at me. From what I could tell, he was a younger man, in possibly his mid-20s, brown hair adorned with a baseball cap and wearing a white t-shirt. The first thought that registered was that I did not like the way he looked at me. He didn't wave, make any gestures, or call out to me, but the way his head was cocked to the side to stare directly at me, unblinking and completely fixated until he was past me, this creeped me out to say the least. Without even needing to look behind me, I knew what he was going to do before he even gave any indication of his next move. Tires screeching against the pavement, the creep made a sharp U-turn, barreling back towards me. I didn't even make it a third of the way down the sidewalk when I completely stopped in my tracks. My alarm bells now going off in unison with the nausea bubbling up in my stomach. But instead of stopping in front of me as I feared, he kept driving past until he pulled up into the driveway of the last house at the end of the street, killing the engine. I immediately was embarrassed, thinking that I had worked myself up into a panic over nothing. Obviously, this was the guy's home, and he had to make a U-turn because he'd mistakenly passed his house on the way home. Granted, the look he had gave me was definitely creepy, but perhaps my paranoid mind fabricated something more sinister than it was. I felt instant relief, but for my peace of mind, I stayed where I was, just until I saw him go inside his house. Then I would carry on with my walk. But that sickening feeling of uneasiness began to creep up on me, as I realized he was sitting stagnant in the driveway for too long and seemed to have no intention of getting out of the vehicle. Minutes passed and I remained where I was, never once taking my eyes off the truck sitting idly in the driveway, as if the driver was just waiting for me. I immediately dismissed the idea, thinking there had to be some rational explanation, until he started his engine up and backed out of the driveway, swiftly turning back onto the road and yet again towards me. My stomach dropped. He hadn't really done anything wrong, but something about this just wasn't right, and my instincts were screaming to nope the fuck out of there. I couldn't though. I was rooted to the spot, afraid that the slightest movement might trigger some predatory instinct. You know how you're advised not to run if you encounter a wild animal to avoid being seen as prey? That's what was running through my mind as my legs suddenly refused to work with me. I watched as he passed me. He made another U-turn as he drove all the way back down the street and abruptly turned into yet another driveway. He continued to do this in a pattern of what I describe as sort of a zigzag formation, pulling into a random driveway and then pulling out, passing me, making a U-turn, driving ahead of me, and then settling into another driveway, each one deliberately closer than the last two, where I stood still, frozen in fear and confusion. My gut feeling intensified as I took note of the way he slowed down each time he drove by me to get a good look at me through his passenger window, which was now rolled all the way down. He made another U-turn into the driveway of the house that was now directly across the street to my left. I knew his game by now. This creep was playing some sick game of cat and mouse with me. He parked furthest down the street knowing I was going in that direction, waiting to corner me there, but I wasn't going anywhere, and now I had summarized that he was purposefully closing in on me, scaring me into running straight into the trap he had planned for me up ahead. I was sure of it. I wasn't being stalked, I was being herded. Well, I wasn't going to have it. I knew I was safe right where I was than the direction he was trying to lead me. There were no shortage of houses nearby I could bang on the doors if push came to shove. This didn't give me as much comfort as one would hope, though. I'd have to act fast on which houses to try in the few seconds of a head start. I was certain he'd get bored of this and eventually make a move that wouldn't involve him playing tag with driveways, and I was prepared to die fighting before letting him take me. I was terrified, but that fear also began to melt into anger. I was so angry at this point that most of my fear had evaporated, and more than anything, I just wanted to kick this bastard's ass for toying with me. As I stood there contemplating on what to do, to my great relief, a woman a few houses ahead of me emerged from her home with her 2 kids. I power walked towards her, instantly striking a conversation in hopes that my pursuer would see me with her and peel off. But no, of course he didn't. Instead, he repeated the same motions as before, but this time pulling into the driveway of the house now directly behind me. I was now terrified. He could get out of the truck, sprint down the lawn, and grab me faster than this woman could process it happening. I hoped the woman, who was now heading towards her van, could see the fear in my eyes as I tried desperately to stall her, continually engaging her in conversation, while simultaneously cocking my head in the direction my pursuer sat, waiting. I heard the creep's car pull out of the driveway, and as I turned to give him the most piercing glare I could muster, I could see that he was now parked directly behind me, a mere few meters away. Our eyes met again, and this time his face split into a sickening smile. I wanted to throw up. Gone was my anger, and in its place pure, unadulterated terror. Now I was just scared for my life and desperately trying to signal this woman for help without tipping off my pursuer. She either didn't seem to notice or didn't want to get involved, and was now at her van loading her kids inside. I knew once she was gone, it was game over. I could hear the creep get out of his vehicle. I looked over my shoulder again, and he was now just standing there, staring directly at me with a predatory smirk on his face. He stood there for a good few minutes before retreating back inside his vehicle, obviously having his fun taunting me. This was a game to him and he wasn't going to stop now. I knew that he was just waiting for this woman to leave so he could strike. We were surrounded by houses, but none of that seemed to matter. If his tactics didn't tell me this, the look in his eyes as he stared me down did. I knew there wasn't a minute to lose. I was going to make a run for it in the direction from where I came. I was certain that this woman's presence was all that was keeping me out of harm's way, and she'd be gone in a matter of moments. Yeah, in hindsight, I know I should have just told her about my suspicions that this creep was stalking me, but at the time, a part of me still thought I might be overreacting. The guy was creepy, but he hasn't technically done anything wrong yet, and I was so afraid I couldn't get the words out if I wanted to. He was right within earshot, and I was just so scared of what he might do if he heard me mention him to this woman. It sounds foolish since obviously he had bad intentions with me anyway, but when you're so frozen with fear, one of your first fears is angering your pursuer. Plus, I was afraid he might try to hurt the woman and her children as well if I asked her for help. So I booked it back in the direction I came instead. Within seconds of my takeoff, I could hear his vehicle peel out and zoom down the street. Either I had successfully evaded him or he was just burning a lap. I didn't piss around to find out. I ran so fast my chest burned and my kneecaps felt like lead, but I didn't dare stop. The race back home was brief, but it felt like forever as I ran like my life depended on it, and it very well might have. As soon as I got to my house, I ducked behind some bushes and waited just in case he came down my street. I wasn't going to risk him seeing me go inside my house. The last thing I wanted was for this creep to know where I lived, so I stayed where I was and kept a lookout. Sure enough, after about 10 minutes of nothing, I saw a black truck slowly coast down my street. I hunkered down lower, afraid he'd see me. Thankfully, he didn't and kept going. As soon as he was out of sight, I leaped from my hiding spot and ran faster than I ever thought was even possible, constantly looking over my shoulder as I fiddled with my lock. Once safely inside, I collapsed on my bed and cried tears of relief. To this day, I know that if I hadn't had the sense to run when I did, things could have turned out a lot worse, and I'm grateful I didn't get to find out. I never saw that truck again. This was definitely one of the more unnerving experiences of my life. I truly thought I was going to be kidnapped. It's hard to believe that this happened in my suburban neighborhood so close to my house, and in broad daylight no less, but it serves to remind that these creeps can be anywhere at any time. It's imperative to always be aware of your surroundings, and trust your gut instincts no matter how many ways you think you can rationalize it. It just might save your life. So, creepy truck driver that stalked me from a string of neighborhood driveways, let's not meet ever again. Hey guys, thank you all for watching my video, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. So, I want to give a big thank you, as always, to GhoulishGal for joining me on my Collab Tuesdays. If you guys haven't yet, please go check out GhoulishGal's channel. She's got a lot of really great stuff on her channel, and I definitely think you guys will enjoy it. And I forgot to say thank you to you guys because the Nightmare Army is now over 6,000 subscribers. Oh yeah! Thank you guys so much for subscribing and supporting this channel. As always, you guys are awesome. I love you guys to death. So guys, I want to talk about Friday's video here because you guys gave me a lot of really good suggestions, but I want to know from you guys, what scary stories do you want more? Do you want hate group scary stories, gang scary stories, run-ins with the mafia scary stories, or hood scary stories, please leave your suggestions down. And if you have any personal scary stories that deal with those topics, feel free to email me. As always, guys, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.